and 20 countries. I'm Ritika Gupta. This is Bloomberg. Alex.
All right, thanks so much, Ritika. Let's continue the conversation on job layoffs, particularly when it comes to the jobs report on Friday. Joining us now, Jessica Kriegel, Chief Scientist of Workplace Culture over Cultural Partners, a business management consulting firm. Jessica, I take a look at the data, and there's a big discrepancy versus the actual hard data, even some of the sentiment indicators versus the amount of layoffs that you're seeing, whether it's tech, banks, or retail. What do you ascribe this difference to?
Groupthink. These CEOs are falling into the trap of groupthink. They're seeing their peers have massive layoffs and they're thinking, I've got to do the same thing. And it's a terrible mistake. The research shows that organizations that do not engage in mass layoffs going into a recession thrive post-recession. And those who do have layoffs struggle afterwards. We are always going to be in a competition for top talent, and the good CEOs know that. So part of it is also changing the narrative. I mean, they want to take the power back, so they've got an opportunity to do layoffs right now, and they're doing it.
Yeah, you do sometimes have to take a pause, don't you? It was only, 6 months ago that we would talk to executives and they said that the toughest thing is finding the talent. We have to hire.
Right.
And that turnaround has been so significant. But they did overhire. That would be the pushback. They added headcount during the pandemic. You look at the likes of Amazon, expanding by hundreds of thousands of employees over that period. They do need to cut back. Would be the push on this?
Well, that's certainly the argument that they're using in order to justify the layoffs that they're having. But here's what's happening now. You've got these layoffs happening, which is going to create an experience for the employees who are left. The anti-work movement is growing. That sentiment is getting louder and louder on social media. People are being frustrated. Young men and young women are leaving the workforce because they are irritated with the nature of work right now. And if CEOs zoom out for a second, they're going to see that the long-term effects of this kind of action is going to be heartburn for them in the future. Maybe it works right now, but it's not going to work in the long term.
Right, but people still need to pay bills. So Jessica, I'm wondering, when we hear all these layoffs, right, and I can appreciate how if you're laying off like 0.5% of your workforce or 6%, in actuality, it's not that huge. Where do they go? How quickly are they finding jobs?
About 1 to 3 months. I mean, for every large, big tech company that's having layoffs, there are many small organizations who are eager to gobble those employees up. So I wouldn't say that there's a dearth right now. What we're seeing, however, is CEOs taking advantage of fear in the headlines. They're saying, you know what? Everyone else is doing it. I can do it. I'm not going to be special news. I'm not going to suffer brand reputation from having done it, because it's just what's happening right now. In reality, employees are going to be okay. Keep the faith. If you're an employee out there that's just been laid off, there are lots of organizations who would love to see you, who are still trying to find those top talent.
And as you look at that demand then with those small organisations, and they can benefit clearly from this in terms of that access to talent, are there particular areas within the tech ecosystem that are most amenable to bringing those hirees back on?
I think it depends on there's the tech sector, then there's industry, there's Main Street, there's knowledge workers, there's skilled workers, and they're not all experiencing the same dynamics in the workforce at the same time right now. So you see organizations, employees who worked at big tech, and now they're taking a massive shift in their employment situation because of the nature of the economy and what they are available to them right now. So it's not one narrative. I mean, there's many different narratives. There are many organizations who are still struggling to find talent right now. And the companies that are going to win are the companies who understand that they have to create a workforce culture that helps employees thrive and feel fulfilled at work.
So if this isn't a sign of the macro, is there a place where it is? So I'm taking a look at banks, tech, retail, the industrials like a 3M is starting to do the layoffs also. Is there a macro signal anywhere where you look in that?
I mean, if I had a crystal ball, I would probably be rich, right? So I don't necessarily have the answer to that, and I'll let the stock analysts and the economists predict what's going to happen in the next 3 months. But what I do know is the number one indicator of success for financial results is if you have clarity of results. As a CEO, if you can be super clear on what it is you're trying to achieve and communicate that to your organization, that's going to allow you to win. So what I would do if I were CEO right now is be crystal clear on what are we trying to achieve in 2023? How can we all get behind that and do it together?
You don't have a crystal ball, but give us a sense as to whether or not you think there are going to be further job losses. Is the bloodletting done at this point, do you think? I mean, particularly within tech and finance, or is there more to come?
I think there's probably more to come. I would counsel CEOs who are planning layoffs that haven't gotten to it yet with this one tip, though. Stop doing these middle of the night, removing access to employees to let them know that they're being laid off. The CEOs who are really elevated are having upfront conversations. They're being transparent. They're exposing themselves to the difficult conversation about why are we having layoffs. They're allowing employees to ask questions. They're giving fair severance packages. And that is really the best way to lead with heart. It's the best way to create a workforce that in a few months, they'll want to come back. They'll be those boomerang employees that we were talking about in 2022.
So, Jessica, it's just so interesting because I feel like the conversation for like a year was that power left with the employees, and then now it's shifted back to the employers. And you're saying that CEOs shouldn't necessarily get sucked into that, and they should still think of the power with the employees. How do they do that? Like, what's the best workplace culture to do that?
Workplace culture is not about perks. It's not about the ping pong tables. It's not about happy hours. And the CEOs who are trying to change workplace culture with those things are failing to leverage culture to get results. Culture is about results. And so how do you get results? It's through your employees' actions. Now, how do your employees take the action you want them to take? It's if they believe in what you're trying to achieve. If you can create the beliefs necessary that make them self-motivate to do the actions you want, then you've got something. And we do that through experiences. So CEOs need to be laser focused on what experiences am I creating? Experience in a town hall, experience when I'm having a conversation on a Zoom, or experiences in how we do layoffs. If we do layoffs, those experiences lead to the beliefs you want employees to have, which will get the actions you want out of them, which is going to get you those results.
Jessica Kriegel, Chief Scientist of Workplace Culture at Culture Partners. Thank you very much indeed on the need for some of these executives maybe to take a pause on the job cuts and give it a long, hard think in terms of how they position for the next 24